Almost instantaneously, what seemed like the entire police force arrived around the block and everything. And it was only then that I realized that obviously this guy was wanted.
Good evening. And first at 5, relief in North Portland after police tracked down and arrest a man they say committed a string of armed robberies and even physically assaulted some of his victims. Thanks for joining us. I'm David Molko.
And I'm Laurel Porter. Detectives say the suspect fired a gun in at least one of those robberies. Let's bring in Mike Benner from outside police headquarters in downtown Portland. Mike, have investigators identified the suspect?
Not yet, Laurel. We expect that at any time. What I can tell you is that this is not this guy's first run-in with law enforcement. A little more than a month ago, one of our KGW crews was tagging along with police on a patrol when they arrested this man. What he's suspected of doing this morning, though, is far more concerning than that day last month.
And the dog clearly is interested in this area.
A longtime resident of the Overlook neighborhood shows us where an hours-long manhunt ended Tuesday morning, in the overgrown backyard of a vacant home near the corner of North Going Court and Colonial Avenue.
And they give him an opportunity to give himself up. And there's no action, so they throw a flashbang right there in front of him.
Doug says his home security cameras captured the wanted man running to where he was eventually found. Detectives say the guy was trying to elude officers after police said he committed as many as 4 armed robberies along North Interstate.
During one of the robberies, a suspect fired several shots. Fortunately, nobody was injured during that. During a subsequent robbery, the suspect physically assaulted a couple of people, and at least one person was transported to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries.
That, of course, is good news. What isn't is the neighborhood going into lockdown for hours as police searched for the armed robbery suspect, who they eventually found hiding in those overgrown bushes.
Almost instantaneously, what seemed like the entire police force arrived around the block and everything. And it was only then that I realized that obviously this guy was wanted.
And as it turns out, no stranger to law enforcement. Our cameras were rolling when police busted him back in early May for having drugs and a loaded gun in downtown Portland. A little more than a month later, he's back in police custody for his alleged role in a series of armed robberies.
I've lived here since 1984, so this is not my first rodeo like this.
As you can imagine, the search for the suspect did shut down some roads for some time. That slowed traffic. Police did acknowledge that inconvenience, but said that they really had to do it for the safety of both officers and the public. In the end, they did get roads back open as soon as they could. Let's send it back to you.
Mike Benner reporting downtown. Thank you, Mike. Let's head to eastern Oregon now. Crews say they are dealing with fast-moving flames after a wildfire broke out this morning near Hat Rock State Park. At last check, it's estimated at about 3,000 acres. The park in Umatilla County near Hermiston is under a level 2 get-set evacuation notice. Firefighters say gusty winds and low relative humidity are making things difficult. The spot near the Columbia is a popular place to fish, swim, and boat. We're going to check in with Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino on those windy conditions, including a red flag warning, coming up in about 10 minutes. Let us talk about the Trump indictment, because this afternoon the former president pleaded not guilty in federal court in Miami. Trump is facing 37 felony charges for allegedly mishandling and showing off classified files. NBC's Alice Barr takes a look at political reaction with Trump now back fundraising in New Jersey and still the Republican frontrunner for president.
As former President Trump makes his first appearance in federal court today, pleading not guilty to charges he mishandled government secrets and misled investigators, he's already appealing to the court of public opinion.
I think it's a rigged deal here. We have a rigged country. We have a country that's corrupt.
Republican reaction growing more mixed, with a few GOP lawmakers now voicing concerns.
What President Trump did was wrong. I mean, it's clear as day.
It's very problematic. There's a reason I'm not defending it.
Most Republicans are standing by the former president.
Justice is not being carried out equally.
Pointing to President Biden's ongoing classified documents investigation.
Politically is seen as a double standard.
Legal analysts stress that unlike Mr. Biden, Mr. Trump is accused of obstructing efforts to get the documents back.
there is evidence that he acted willfully. That is, he knew what he was doing, and he even knew what he was doing was illegal.
Former President Trump faces a 37-count indictment accusing him of storing highly classified national security documents haphazardly around Mar-a-Lago, showing them to people twice and concealing them from investigators. On the campaign trail, a shift to sharper rhetoric from some GOP rivals.
If this indictment is true, if what it says is actually the case, President Trump was incredibly reckless with our national security.
There are people in my own party who are blaming DOJ. How about blame him? He did it.
Others keeping up the pressure on the Republican frontrunner as the first federal indictment of a former U.S. president sends shockwaves through the 2024 race for the White House. There are a lot of questions about whether any trial will play out during the presidential race or push until after the election, and what effect all of that will have. The former president has been fundraising on the indictment, including an event set for tonight back in New Jersey. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
And look to KGW on air and online for continuing coverage of the arraignment. We'll have another update at 5:30 on NBC Nightly News. Lester Holt is anchoring the show live from Miami tonight. Coverage includes the next legal steps in this case. We have new information on the legal challenge to Oregon's Measure 114 that's still in limbo in Harney County. The voter-approved measure seeks to strengthen gun laws. A hearing that was set for this Friday has now been canceled. The trial date is now scheduled for September. We've also learned 2 of the plaintiffs have pulled out. Those are Gun Owners of America, Inc. and Gun Owners Foundation. Their lawyer says their participation as plaintiffs is not needed anymore, and 2 other plaintiffs are still moving the case forward. The Harney County judge's injunction also remains, effectively blocking Measure 114's new gun restrictions for now.
Developing this evening, we are keeping a close eye on some local Providence hospitals where nurses fighting for a better contract are preparing to strike next week. Blair Best takes a look at the potential impact on patients.
9 months of contract negotiations ending in a looming strike. It's what nearly 2,000 nurses at some Providence hospitals are calling a last resort.
People are very sad and frustrated and just want things to be better.
Nurses are fighting for stronger benefits, including paid sick time, hazard pay, and increased wages.
It's a huge slap in the face, especially for the longer serving nurses.
Like Kimberly Martin.
Oh, I can't tell you how disappointed. I've been with the Sisters of Providence for over 30 years. And I've just really noticed a change in their stance toward their employees.
Providence management was unable to talk with KGW on camera Tuesday, but sent a statement instead, saying they're waiting until the strike is over to continue negotiations. The strike is expected to start next week and last 5 days.
I think the biggest effect we could have is if they sat down and negotiated with us.
An important note here is that during a strike, there will be less staff, so the hospitals are preparing for that impact, meaning that some services will be limited or closed. But this only affects services at Providence Portland, Seaside, and Providence Home Health and Hospice.
Providence is in the process of bringing in travel nurses for next week, saying a strike could jeopardize some patients' care, like this couple who have been Providence Portland patients for 10 years.
It would be affected if, I had an emergency or something like that and there's no nurses. But I think management needs to seriously take into consideration what the nurses want.
It will put a strain on the hospital and the community. And the nurses have been feeling this strain, and we hope that they take steps to avoid that.
Nurses will start picketing Monday morning, followed by a rally outside Providence, Portland that evening. Blair Best, KGW News.
An update now to a story we first shared with you on Friday. Ticketing company Brown Paper Tickets will pay the $11,000 it owes to Lincoln High School's theater program. Lincoln's theater director Tracy Tallarico tells KGW she received an email saying the company will pay up by the end of this week. The Portland High School contracted with Brown Paper Tickets to manage ticket sales for its fall and winter productions, but the company kept the proceeds for more than 6 months. KGW previously covered how a ballet studio in Beaverton and a Portland choir were owed money from brown paper tickets. These organizations got their ticket revenue after we shared their stories. Tallarico says the high school theater program will now be able to use their ticket revenue to put on new shows, pay licensing rights, get costumes, and make production and lighting improvements. So glad they're getting the money they're owed.
Couldn't agree more. You're watching